The second scripture reading for this morning continues and concludes the 10th chapter of the Gospel according to Mark. It can be found beginning on page 818 in the Pew Bibles. Starting with the 35th verse. James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came forward to him, Jesus, and said to him, "Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask of you." And Jesus said to them, "What is it you want me to do for you?" And they said to him, "Grant us to sit, one at your right hand and one at your left, in your glory." But Jesus said to them, "You do not know what you are asking. Are you able to drink the cup that I drink, or be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with?" They replied, "We are able." Then Jesus said to them, "The cup that I drink you will drink, and with the baptism with which I am baptized you will be baptized. But to sit at my right hand or at my left is not mine to grant, but it is for those whom it has been prepared." When the 10 heard this, they began to be angry with James and John. So Jesus called them and said to them, "You know that among the Gentiles, those whom they recognize as their rulers lord it over them, and their great ones are tyrants over them. But it is not so among you. But whoever wishes to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wishes to be first among you must be slave of all. For the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life a ransom for many." They came to Jericho. As Jesus and his disciples and a large crowd were leaving Jericho, Bartimaeus, son of Timaeus, a blind beggar, was sitting by the roadside. When he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to shout out and say, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." Many sternly ordered him to be quiet, but he cried out even more loudly, "Son of David, have mercy on me." Jesus stood still and said, "Call him here." And they called the blind man, saying to him, "Take heart, get up, he is calling you." So, throwing off his cloak, he sprang up and came to Jesus. Then Jesus said to him, "What do you want me to do for you?" The blind man said to him, "My teacher, let me see again." Jesus said to him, "Go, your faith has made you well." Immediately he regained his sight and followed him on the way. May God's blessing reside with the experiences of Scripture on this day. May it guide the meditations of our hearts and the words of my lips. When I had the opportunity to teach human civilization, all of human history in 2 courses. Makes a lot of sense, right? We're going to cover all of human history in two courses. I had 2 45-minute classes on Rome. 2 45-minute classes on Rome. One of the things we talked about, it's important in understanding who we are as human beings, it's important in understanding the gospel, the world that Jesus and the disciples lived in, and the one that Mark and his community lived in, is this idea of a patron-client relationship. So there is somebody who has access, means, wealth, power, whatever, and then there's me, and I don't have those things. But I'm looking for something. I need help with something. And so I go to the person who has access, means, wealth, and power, and I ask them to help me. And they agree to be my patron. They will take care of something that I need. And in return, I will pledge my loyalty to them. I will be their client. The patron-client relationship. It's not just Roman history that this is a human thing. I think ever since we had at least 2 or 3 humans walking around we've had this idea of a patron-client relationship. We see it even today. It exists. It's the idea of, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. But in Rome, it was one of the things that underpinned the whole hierarchy. The empire and empire thought was built on this patron-client relationship. If somebody in power can do something for me, whether it was taking care of my basic needs, maybe it was taking care of my children, maybe it was getting me a job, whatever it was, I would pledge loyalty to them. And in the Roman Empire, the Roman elite, the emperor and those upper classes were people of wealth, means, power, access, the ability to do. And so others would want to ride their coattails, to hitch themselves to whatever person it was. And if the person was on the ascendancy, if they were a rising star, even better, right? Because if you can prove yourself loyal when they weren't great yet, when they got to greatness, ooh, good times for you. If I just pick the right horse to back, and they come across the line first, good times for me. That's the world that Jesus and the disciples, Mark and the church, that's the world that they were living in. There was no concept of the individual working hard and finding a way to sort of make it through the world. There wasn't even sort of a sense of a lottery that you might get lucky enough to win. You entered these relationships. And if you were expecting a Messiah to come along and take the world as you knew it, with the empire on the top, and you fishing at the bottom, and invert it, well, you would want to ride the coattails of that Messiah. You just got to find the right one. And then at the right time, you had to come forward and say, we would like something from you. We've reached that moment in Mark's gospel. This is the third time that Jesus says, I'm going to die. I'm going to the cross. And it's the third time the disciples have not picked up on what was going on, haven't seemed to fully understand. They don't seem to experience the words saying, I'm going to the cross. What they are hearing is, Jesus is going to kick the Romans out. The kingdom is coming in. The realm is going to bust through. And we want to ride Jesus in. We want to be the first ones in line. We want to be closest to the incoming king. We want to be people of importance and power and prestige. We want to be shakers and movers in this new world order, because when Messiah comes, the empire is going to be inverted. It's still empire thought, by the way. It's just upside down. That's all it is. And so, as they travel the road, Mark, interestingly enough, calls it the way, which was a term used to describe early followers of Christ. We were on the way. Mark says they're on the way, and in Lent we are journeying to Jerusalem on the way. We are on the path to the cross when Jesus says, I am going to die. And then James and John, sons of Zebedee, good disciples, people of faith, say, you know what, Jesus, we want something from you. Patron-client relationship. And Jesus has that great question. Oh, that question. What is it you want me to do for you? What do you want me to do for you? We want to be number 2 and number 3 in the kingdom. We want to be on the right and the left when you come into your glory. We want to be, and I don't know what the what the equation would be for us today. What? Vice President and Treasurer? Secretary of State. We want to be the second and third most important, powerful, influential people in the realm of God when it comes breaking in. We want to be those people. And Jesus says, can you handle it? Now that should always be a red flag, by the way. When someone says, can you handle it, you should immediately put pause on the question and go, oh. Can you handle what it is that is coming down the pipe? You want to ride the coattails in, but do you understand where this coat is going? Do you know where this cloak is leading you? Do you know where these sandaled feet are ultimately walking? And they say, yes, we can do it. And I believe that as people of faith, they had some inkling. They had some. Kind of like when we get baptized, we have some inkling, right? We know for certain we're going to get wet. At least if it's done right, you're going to get wet. Even if it's a misting spray bottle. We don't know the fullness of it. I think these disciples didn't know the fullness of it, but by golly, they wanted to make sure that they were in line when Jesus came into his glory. And then there's the other 10. And isn't this church as we know it today, right? There's the other 10 who see the two trying to get ahead, and they're like, wait a minute. That's not right. We want to be number 2 and number 3 in the kingdom. We want to be the biggest church. We want to be the most important. We want to be the ones of the prestige and the power and the influence. Showing up is a big step. And so the other 10 get real angry over this. Get real upset. Again, this is the third time Jesus has predicted the upcoming crucifixion. It's the third time the disciples have not figured it out, and it's the third time that Jesus teaches what it is to be a disciple. What does it mean to actually follow? Not to ride on the coattails, but to actually follow. To travel the way with Jesus. And they end up in Jericho. We have to read this longer portion to get this, because when Mark assembles it, when Mark puts this together, he intentionally puts the story of Bartimaeus, which literally means son of Timaeus, so it's a redundant sort of name. He puts this story in after this moment with the disciples, so that the church might get a fuller sense of what's going on. The disciples, James and John, as the epitome of how we can be as human beings, they want to be second and third. Give us something. What do you want me to do for you? We want something from you as our patron, Jesus. And then they get into Jericho, and they leave Jericho, and there is Bartimaeus on the side of the road. Jesus, the disciples, the crowd, they're all moving, and Bartimaeus on the side of the road cries out. He will not be silenced. He's not looking for a ride. He's not looking for power, prestige, access, wealth, whatever it might be. He's not looking for that. No, he will not be silenced. He is looking for something else. And Jesus, just so Mark can drive the point home for us, Jesus turns to him and says, "What is it you want me to do for you?" Patron-client. What can I do for you? Bartimaeus asks for vision. Now, in Scripture, vision can mean a literal healing of eyesight, but more often than not, it is getting at the underlying insight of the human being. Because in the ancient understanding of vision, it was a light that came from inside of us and came out through our eyes and fell on an object, and then we perceived it. So a lack of eyesight could mean a lack of perception. Bartimaeus perceived things that the disciples who had been traveling with Jesus in that moment did not fully understand. Bartimaeus perceived things that the crowd who had been growing and gathering on this journey to Jerusalem did not quite fully understand in that moment. Bartimaeus perceived, and so he asked to see. He received vision, but most importantly, he was made well, whole. He had insight. James and John asked to be at the places of prestige and power. Bartimaeus said, "Make me well. Bring me to wholeness. Let me experience the realm of God come near." And we are told when he experiences it, he does not ask to ride coattails in. He doesn't ask out of an expectation. I've been with you this whole time. I deserve this. I have followed you all of this way. I should receive something for it. I have been loyal since the beginning. I should get more than those that come to the party later. That's another gospel lesson. We are told in the scripture that Bartimaeus gets up and he followed him on the way. Bartimaeus, as the exemplar of discipleship in that moment, got up and followed on the way. I don't think that James and John are bad people by any stretch of the imagination. I think they're human beings. I think they represent disciples and discipleship. I think they represent the struggles of church. Because there are times when we can be just make us important again. I can appreciate that feeling. It's the kind of thing that leads us to put our names on stuff, right? We want to be remembered, to know we've had an impact in the world. It's a sense of valuing ourselves, and I can appreciate that. I can't appreciate the fullness of what James and John were going through because in the empire thought world that we live in, I have not found myself at the bottom fishing. But I do know the desire for being further up the ladder. And Mark gives us this that we might find a corrective. That we too might receive the insight that is intended for us. Because as the series that we've been in and is concluding is talking about, this is getting serious. Bartimaeus is not seeking to ride in glory. He's not seeking a position because of his proximity to the patron. He's seeking wholeness. He's seeking to be well, and he's seeking to follow. I think he's seeking to be church today. Thanks be to God, and amen.